Definitely. Started had some pretty good success early on, and realized that I could probably play in college. So certainly, had to kind of cut out some other sports that I loved, but winning's always a lot more fun than losing. So I guess I picked a sport that I won more in. So um, yeah, that was a pretty easy decision, one that I was certainly happy I made.
Did you ever have a period in your childhood where there was maybe not because you were playing other sports where golf's a pretty relentless thing. You got to do it all the time. There's a lot of practice involved. Did you ever fall out of love with golf for a little while at any point?
Yes and no. It was nice, being such a pretty competitive basketball player and playing on really good team in high school. Is I didn't really play much golf in the winters here in Kansas City. Certainly in January and February and December, golf was a complete afterthought. So that was kind of nice to get away from it, and then when you'd come back to it, you'd be fresh, and you'd be certainly excited, early on in the spring and the summer, and in the fall, you weren't burnt out. Come to the fall, like I feel like like I might have gotten sometimes in college, just because that was my first time, but yeah, I mean, I think you fall in and out of the love with the game, right now where I am now in this stage. So I think you'll always kind of have the ups and downs. Um, but yeah, golf is certainly a game that requires a lot of time, a lot of energy and effort, and versus one of my best friend's brothers, Joey Wentz, and he plays baseball, and the time he has to put in is much different than the time a lot of his is working on his body versus the actual action of playing of the game. So it's just different, and it's just kind of the way it is. But yeah, there's certainly days you really love to practice. First days you're just like, look, I want to do anything else besides this, but it's part of it. And a lot more days I want to go to the golf course than don't.
We're sitting here in your family home, and you have a couple of sisters. You're the oldest, and it seems like you've had kind of a normal American childhood. Is that how you describe it?
Yeah. I mean, I've been very fortunate with the way I was raised and the support I've been given from my family, and just being very supportive of whatever I've wanted to do, and yeah, had an awesome childhood and was raised in this house. I think we moved here when I was in kindergarten. I was homeschooled in kindergarten, first and second, so I guess I got a few more hours at the golf course at those years. And yeah, we grew up or I was born at a house in Westwood, and then we moved here when I was, I think, in kindergarten.
That's really neat, and we have most people who are excellent in golf, especially, did start playing when they were very, very young. That Ho Chung Yoi or whatever his name is, he started when he played when he was 25. But those are very rare stories. So you mentioned that you got to a point where you felt like you'd be able to play in college. What was there? Not a moment, but was there a year or a time when you said, I'm good at this. I really think I can do this.
Yeah. I quit baseball, I think, in sixth grade, so maybe that was the time, because I loved baseball and had awesome times with that. It's probably still my second favorite sport to follow and play, and I don't play, but that was certainly the second favorite sport kind of growing up. And maybe around then, sixth grade, I realized I was pretty good. I was having success at a junior level, and ultimately had to make the difficult decision to quit playing baseball. So I would say around sixth grade.
You are a big guy, and what are you, 6'2", 6'3"?
Yeah, about 6'2", yeah.
And you told me before that you basically were bigger than your peers generally, and you hit the golf ball a long way. Was that another real encouragement when you could blow it by your buddies and hit it long off the tee?
Yeah, I wish I still had that at the professional ranks. I mean, I'm certainly not short, but I'm certainly not a bomber either. So, but yeah, it was definitely something that certainly helps. I mean, in the modern game, it's not so much accuracy anymore as it is length, and certainly growing up, I was one of the longest, if not the longest, with the guys I played with. So It certainly helped. And as an old cliche in golf, if you can't drive, you can't play. If you can't putt, you can't score. So I could always drive it pretty good. So I could always, get around. And it obviously helps to be bigger in every sport, but golf's kind of undervalued. You look at everybody out on the tour. Not many small guys anymore. Not many guys who aren't, pretty well put together. And you got to have length to compete at the highest level.
When you were, I played a fairly amount of serious golf in my 30s, and I used to play with a lot of younger guys, and there were a lot of them who were so talented, and when they'd play with them, however, they really didn't finish off a lot of holes. You'd play with them, and they'd hit the ball, and they hit it on the green, they missed their birdie putt, and they just walk up there and rake it in, or not. Were you like that, or were you somebody who was more attuned to the details of it? And I'm sure that they cleaned that up eventually. They were good players, but it was kind of always funny for me to play with those guys.
Yeah, the club pro guy, quick rake. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's kind of nice. I don't play as much, what you might consider like enjoyable golf, where you kind of go out with your buddies and you're just kind of hanging out playing golf. I don't do that much anymore, but it is fun every once in a while. I did it a couple times actually when I was back here in December, kind of in pretty much just hangout mode, and it's nice and it's kind of fun. It's going out there. You don't care what you shoot. And you kind of start to realize, that's kind of where you, those are the moments you kind of fell in love with golf. It wasn't so serious, wasn't so intense, and it's nice to have a few days like that. But I don't get the chance to do that too much anymore.
I guess part of what I was getting at is how serious were you when you started to realize that you were pretty good? Were you somebody who was kind of dialed in on a lot of the details of the game, or was it just something you were good at? You were dedicated to it, but how would you rate your level of dedication as you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty high. My dedication certainly, was up to notch when I went to KU and played for Coach Bermel there. I mean, he's kind of laid out what it takes to, to succeed at the highest level, and bought into that and kind of bought into what the culture of his program he set out. But yeah, I mean, I would say it was certainly spent, whether you want to call it, focused practice or hours on the courts. I would think I spent, just as much time as anyone. And yeah, I mean, it's not, it's not all about the time you put in, but golf, pretty much more than any other sport, it requires more time, the actual hours out doing what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, I remember being in the summers. I actually remember a couple days. I was like a couple days if I didn't, nothing was going on at school. I remember a couple times, I wouldn't go to school, and I would be out at the golf course from like, 8 to 8 or 8 to 6. So, but loving it. It wasn't like that. Didn't feel like work to me. It was, you're out playing with your buddies. You probably go in and have lunch. You putt on the, have putting contests in the greens or do whatever, and that to me was the best. And those are some fun times with my buddies out at the golf course.
Well, I know from talking to you before, we were both at Meadowbrook for a while at the same time. We didn't know this until recently, but you said you never went in the pool, so I guess that would give you an indication of the fact that you were pretty serious. Yeah,
no, never went to the pool. Maybe that's why I wasn't very good with the girls in high school, because I was never at the pool. I don't know. But yeah, just I was on the course, or all my friends, for the most part, at Meadowbrook were golfers, so I'd play with them. We had an awesome group of juniors, so that obviously helps anyone develop, but especially, looking back at that, certainly a reason why I feel like I'm, able to play professionally, just because, I loved being able to go out and play with your friends versus, a lot of kids don't have that luxury. Have to be, maybe they're out there by themselves or whatever. So, yeah, I didn't go to the pool very much.
You had a very big summer right before you went to college. Was that a point where obviously you were accomplished anyway because you were a recruited golfer by the time you did this, but you went out and you won the Kansas Missouri Amateur the same summer and a couple other tournaments as well, accomplishments that hadn't been done in a long, long time. Did that raise your confidence level a level or two, or have you always been a pretty confident player?
Yeah, I mean, certainly you're gonna, kind of seeing the results certainly give you confidence, and winning in golf is hard. There's a bunch of guys who tee it up in each event, and only one guy wins. So, being able to have a really good summer before I went to KU was great. It gave me confidence that I could compete at the next level, and then. Yeah, I mean, I've always been pretty confident in my abilities. But anytime you win golf tournaments, that's going to, go a long ways versus I've always been a guy who likes to play in a lot of events just because I don't get a whole lot out of I can practice for, a week or two at a time, but at the end of the day, you need, to me, the best practice can sometimes be actually just playing in a lot of events. Especially now, I feel like the first, if we're playing 3 weeks in a row, I usually feel that I'm at my best the second or third week, just because the first week you're still, having to get in the groove of competition, and competition is so much different than sitting on the range or even just going out and playing with your buddies. So yeah, that summer was huge for me in the my collegiate career, I would think.
I don't think people have much of a handle on the life of a collegiate golfer. You went to KU just after they made a coaching change, and the program would improve drastically while you went there. You're a scholarship athlete at that point in time, although a lot of the players aren't full scholarship players, but you were basically. We don't need to go into the details of that. We discussed that. It took about 20 minutes to discuss it, so we won't do that. But also, you're living a college life, but you're an athlete that has to practice and do all those type of things. You're in a cold weather climate. What is sort of the life of a college golfer at a place like Kansas, which isn't a powerhouse, but has been a good golf program?
Yeah, it's exactly the way I would put it. I mean, KU's a solid program. Coach Bermel's done a great job. We certainly don't have the luxury of having the weather like the southern schools do. Which makes it tough. But they actually just got a pretty top of the line facility put in at Jayhawk Club, so that'll help them going forward. But yeah, I mean we always Coach Bermel kind of coached with a chip on his shoulder in terms of we can't go into an event with that as an excuse. We got to be do X, Y, and Z better than everybody else, and I think for the most part every year we bought into that, and we usually played pretty darn well in cold and windy conditions or tough conditions versus going out to Arizona, and we had some success in nice weather, but dome golf was not our favorite just because that's not what we played in every day. So we had a great tournament. Big 12s, we got third my senior year, and that was our best finish, and can't even remember, but a long time. So yeah, I mean KU has its challenges with golf, but I mean they're going to make the tournament pretty much every year for the foreseeable future with Coach Bermel at the lead. So hopefully they can rattle off some good postseason finishes here in the next few years.
What was your college experience like besides playing golf, being a regular student, doing your studies, things like that? You strike me as somebody who might like being a student. I mean, that you were at least reasonably studious, but you can tell me if that's not the case. But what is that balance like being an athlete and practicing and everything else? That I don't think people realize how difficult a challenge that is to put in all that time, and then also have to put in your time just being a college student, a student.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I loved it. Those have been the best 4 years of my life so far. I mean, they were so much fun. Being able to play for a school you'd grown up, loving and cheering for. I've grown up and went to the Syracuse KU game in New Orleans and went to the Mario game in San Antonio. Grew up a diehard KU fan. To be able to play for KU and obviously kind of helped turn the golf program around was great. And yeah, I mean, you're obviously a student